my body went into cardiac arrest. All of a sudden, I found myself outside of my body. It's frightening. I was greeted by my grandfather, Russell, and he said, "Mark, you're going home now." He guided me into the light where I was greeted by 7 angels. You do this thing called a life review. They asked me, how does that relate to love? They introduced me to a being that was around 30 feet tall. And this being had a lot of love for me, a lot of compassion, and it knew everything about me. The 30-foot being formed an icosahedron, which is a platonic solid, and entered my heart. That's what brought me back to life. You realize that everything that you want is inside here, the closet of your own heart. I got a phone call from a woman I never met, I never spoke with before, and she described verbatim in detail in my near-death experience. They talked to me about, I am from Iowa. I'm a latchkey kid from Iowa. I had countless encounters with ETs, angels, UFOs as a child. I always saw lights, what we call the energetic field, the aura around people. I had experiences with the other dimensional realities, especially in my dream state. And I would know things about people. I would know what they were feeling before they knew what they were feeling. And unfortunately, I was told, that I was crazy. Don't talk about that. Why do you know that? Don't tell anyone else. My father, who was a holy roller, a Jesus zealot, he always told me that I was possessed. It becomes very confusing to have all these experiences, especially as a kid, a child, a teenager, knowing all this stuff and always being ridiculed or shamed for having all these insights. By the time I was 12 or 13 years old, I was drinking alcohol, doing drugs because I didn't want to feel it. I didn't want to know stuff anymore. I just wanted to numb it out. I wanted to tune it out. It became overwhelming, and it was just it was hurtful, to be told that you were crazy all the time. At a high school party when I was 16 years old, it was 38 years ago around this time, at the Canterbury Inn in Coralville, Iowa. I was at a high school party with a lot of all my friends were older than me. And I thought I was going to be cool that night. So I was trying to impress my older classmates. So I chugged a fifth of vodka, 4 beers, 2 glasses of wine, and about 3 or 4 wine coolers in about 90 minutes. My classmates were all around me as I was downing the vodka, going chug, chug, go, 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 go. Needless to say, my body went into cardiac arrest. I died from acute alcohol poisoning. My skin was black, green, and purple. And all of a sudden I found myself outside of my body trying to get my classmates' attention. And anyone that's had a near-death experience will tell you that when you first leave your body, it's frightening. It's scary because you all of a sudden realize that you're not there anymore. You're outside of your body. You're trying to get people's attention and no one hears you. And then I was greeted by my grandfather, Russell. He passed away around when I was between 2 and 3 years old. And he said, Mark, you're going home now. So I guess I was under the impression that, I screwed up. I guess this is it. And that's when I went into the light. He kind of guided me into the light where I was greeted by 7 angels. They were 14 feet tall in appearance. Also, again, anyone that's had a near-death experience will tell you, you do this thing called a life review. You review your life, what your strengths and weaknesses are. Anytime that I was angry, resentful, or blamed other people, and that's, of course, all that you do when you're a teenager. They asked me, how does that relate to love? And everything in life is our opportunity to express love. Forgiveness is for giving your love away no matter what happens to you. And if you're always forgetting the car, the accolades, the house, the Rolex watch, whatever it may be, you're out forgetting things. You're forgetting who you really are. Again, this is a multi-dimensional experience, parallel lives, parallel universes, and it's all simultaneous. So as, Russell was kind of telling me that I was going on, they introduced me to a being that was around 30 feet tall. And this being had a lot of love for me, a lot of compassion, and it knew kind of everything about me. Then they talked to me a lot about sacred geometry, healing through sound, vocal toning, and the Melchizedek priesthood. The 30-foot being formed an icosahedron, which is a platonic solid, and entered my heart. And that's what brought me back to life. An instant, like a flash, the soul that was in my body from the time that I was conceived to 16 went with my grandfather, Russell. And this 30-foot being came into my heart and brought me back to life. I was completely comatose, unconscious, dead, lifeless, whatever you want to call it. I was out for around 22 minutes. I mean, that's what I've been told many times in my dreams. The first few days was very confusing. Everyone seemed like they were this big to me, especially my mom. And I really kind of didn't know where I was at. And around the fourth day, the memories of Mark, who I was a sophomore at Iowa City West in Iowa City, Iowa, and everything kind of clicked back into place. That's what happened. And I've told this story since 1997. I've not changed the story. I will never change the story because that's what happened to me.
But do you feel any pressure, or did you feel any pressure back then from people not believing your story or doubting it? Did you, especially because you were just in university, right? So you must have been around 20 years old.
No, I was 16.
There you go.
Yeah. So to answer your question is that I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell anyone what happened to me that night. I think around 1992, 93, 6-7 years after that, I told the girl I was dating in Charleston, South Carolina at the time, Kirsten. I told my best friend Dean, who's a chiropractor and acupuncturist. They were the only two people that knew about what had happened to me. As a child, I would dream over and over again. Anytime I wanted to feel loved, anytime that I wanted to feel belonged, Winnie the Pooh, Tigger, Disneyland. I didn't go to Disneyland until I was like 37 years old, but I would dream about those things. I'd find myself inside my bedroom closet. Anytime I wanted to feel special, like I belonged, that I would find myself in my dreams inside that bedroom closet in Iowa City, Iowa, where I grew up at. Well, almost 10 years after my near-death experience, I got a phone call from a woman I never met, I never spoke with before. I really don't know how she got my number. And she described verbatim in detail my near-death experience. That they talked to me about sacred geometry, healing through sound, the Melchizedek priesthood. And then she went on to describe that dream I had over and over again as a child, that I was inside my bedroom closet a lot, where I found love. And of course, 40 some years later, you realize that the dream was about remembering that everything that you want is inside here, the closet of your own heart. So the woman I met, I'll just say her name was Deb. We met about a year or so later, and she was a real person. Unfortunately, I've not heard anything from her since around 1999.
But why did she contact you?
According to her, she was told by her angels to call me, to talk to me.
And it was just so that you could not necessarily remember, but was it your impulse to share your experience?
No, the message was for me to get out and talk about it, for me to get out and check to me. I have this real powerful gift with sound that I didn't understand, that I wasn't aware of at the time. Like in 93, 94, 95, when I was down in Charleston the first time, we were experimenting with toning and sound. And that was kind of when the book Bringers of the Dawn by Barbara Marciniak came out, which is a phenomenal book about the planet being a matrix and influences and altercations by ETs and things like that. Around that time is when the tone started coming through me. And then she was like, yeah, you got to get out and talk and present this information. So a year after that, in fact, August 17th of 1997, I spoke in front of about 150, 200 people about my near-death experience and about the vocal toning that I do. And then I did expos and conferences from 97 to 2017, 20 years or so.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to unpack, so you mentioned sound being healing, and I want to dive a bit deeper into that. And then you also talked about sacred geometry. So can we start with sound and understand a bit of why is sound healing? What kind of sounds? What can we do?
Edgar Cayce, the famous psychic, said that sound would be the healing modality of the future. We know that medical doctors today will use sound waves, sound frequencies to break up gallstones and kidney stones. Greg Braden, the famous author, has shown on an ultrasound video 3 Chinese healers doing Qigong and doing vocal toning and chanting. They dissolve a golf ball sized tumor in about 3 minutes, because sound is a pure frequency. It's a higher vibration. And what happens is, like, you have a cancer tumor that's a dense vibration, it breaks it up, almost like a soprano. An alto soprano can use their voice to break up glass. Well, this is why sound is so important. Just look at the word universe. The word universe means one song. The word person is Greek for persona, through sound. So if you look at all the masters' names, Jesus' name wasn't Jesus, it was Yeshua or Yeshuva, Sai Baba, Mir Baba, Yogananda. They all have the sound in it at the end, right? There's a man by the name of Hans Jens who did cymatics, and he showed that when you run a sound wave or a frequency through a sand filing or like little pieces of magnets, they all form specific geometric patterns. With the sound and geometry, you're combining a really powerful healing resonance. So Hans Jens showed, that this is very true, that everything in nature is based on sound, frequency, and geometries. What happened with me is that these pure tones were coming through me and having a really profound effect on people. The Native Americans, specifically the Anasazi and Hopi, talked about how that the elders would sing to crops of corn and they'd produce kernels of corn the size of most men's thumbs. James Redfield in the book Celestine Prophecy talks about singing to your plants and allowing your plants to grow. So everything is based on frequency. This is why sound is so important to you and me and to the planet, is that there's a farmer in Wisconsin called Dan Carlson, and Dan Carlson became interested in sound and healing through Rife technology because his wife had cancer, and Rife technology is based on aligning frequencies, to help dissolve tumors, and that's what helped heal her. And he became fascinated because he was aware of Hans Jens' work with cymatics. He started playing around with frequencies and things like that. And he found that when he ran a 4,000 to 5,000 hertz frequencies through his crops, that they produced a 400% greater yield. Now, I didn't say 30 or 40% greater yield. I'm talking 400% greater yield running the sound wave through the crops. And it happened time and time again. So he became fascinated with things in nature, wanted to see what they were vibrating at. Well, he found that when birds chirp in the morning, they're singing between 4,000 and 5,000 hertz frequency. So birds are literally bringing life into the planet every morning that they sing. And then crickets, they chirp about 2,000 cycles per second. And they kind of close everything down at night. So again, everything is based on harmonics, frequency, and energy in the planet.
So what can we then practically do? Because I imagine you said tumors have a very dense vibration. So I can imagine we have a vibration. We can be lower on the vibrational scale if we're sad, if we're anxious, if we're depressed. We can be higher if we're in gratitude. What are practical things that we can do to improve our lives, or maybe just to be even more practical, our mood?
Jonathan Goldman, who's probably the most well-known sound healer on the planet, he and I did a conference together in Sedona back in 2007, and then we met again in Santa Fe a year or two later at a sound and consciousness conference. And I think he's 120% correct that everything is about intent. So what someone can do to raise their vibration or to heal something within them, they're playing around with chanting or toning or whatever it may be, is that you just would say something like, it's my intent with this sound that I create a healing within my body. And you can make any sound you want. Back to the sound and cymatics. They found that when you do the sound, and you run that through an oscillator, that sound produces the Suryantra symbol. The Suryantra is the Hindu symbol of God. It's the 27 interlaced triangles. That frequency produces that symbol each and every time. Those things like that are just really powerful tools to help someone transform their own consciousness. But it's the intent that you put behind the sound that's the most important. It doesn't really matter if you can sing like Pavarotti or not, it's all about the intent behind the sound, and that you give it the intent and the vibration, the direction, because the intent and the sound interact with each other.
And I have heard that in yoga, you have the Om sound, and it's also meant to, if you do it like really long, it's something that just calms the nervous system, I think.
Yeah, it's very common because the Om puts you kind of in that center point, the 0 point, or the void. It allows you to go to relax. And in presenting this since 1997, we have seen over and over again, when I do the vocal toning, people call me a human singing bowl because that's what I sound like. I sound like one of the crystal bowls. And we've seen over and over again, it just calms everyone. And everyone just creates a field of stillness. The first documentary that was done about my work was called The Sound of Stillness, because that's what I call it, because that's what it produces. It's people don't sleep at night because they carry all their stress or anxiety in their energy field. And they're in this inner battle with their energy field because they hold on to all this stuff. Neuromagic used a $40,000 computer software program in Sedona, Arizona, to measure the effects of my toning on brain waves. And it found that it would put the theta waves, delta waves, gamma waves, all in the correct, and alpha waves all in the correct ratio, which helps what people who have insomnia relax and sleep better at night, because it clears your energy field. The other thing that we saw over and over again, and it didn't matter if I had 4 people or 400 people in the room, that the tones that came through me go to each individual person's greatest point of pain. And we saw it time and time again. And usually after about 15, 20 minutes of doing the tone, people would they'd be out, like a hypnotist goes, sleep, and people, because it enables someone to relax and let go.
Wow, that's amazing. Just to clarify something about the alpha and beta and theta waves, is that something that each of us have, or do they just exist around us? Are we able to influence them in any way?
The brain waves are different. There's alpha, beta, delta, and gamma waves. Beta is waking state, like you and I are in, talking right now. Alpha and theta, you get into more of the deeper creativity, the relaxation state, or when we go into REM sleep at night, they produce more of the theta waves. And then the gamma waves relate to higher states of consciousness that, Dr. Joe Dispenza talks a lot about. If you really want to get into higher states of consciousness, it's about the gamma waves, which is around 40 hertz.
Yeah, I've been looking into him a lot. I really love what he's talking about. It does feel, I think, at times, at least for myself, a bit complex to really follow it and to take practical advice from. I don't know if I'm the only one feeling that, but yeah.
Yeah, he has a lot of information, no doubt about it. He's really good, though. But yeah, you have to be really patient with yourself and realize that he's a pretty smart guy, and you got to be patient. And sometimes you got to listen to him over and over again for it to kind of click on.
So what I also wanted to ask you is, I've been seeing online a trend around binaural beats. Can you explain for our audience, what is that? Is it helpful? Is there any point where I should just search for it on Spotify and play it if I'm anxious? Does it help at all?
So yeah, binaural beats just basically introduce one beat at a different rate, and then they play another beat at either a higher or lower rate. And what happens, because we're listening to, we listen to a beat, bum, 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 bum. I've tried to play drums a few times, whether it's, 4/4 time or 16th notes or quarter notes, 8 notes, whatever it may be. Phil Collins was one of the few drummers that could play quarter notes on his left hand and 16 notes on his right hand, which that is a trick in itself. One hemisphere of your brain is listening to 16 notes, and the left other hemisphere is listening to quarter notes. It creates a confusion in your brain that all it does is it relaxes because it surrenders. It drops you into a relaxed state. So that's what binaural beats. And Kelly Howe probably has more CDs, MP3 downloads with binaural beats than anyone else that I know of. The Monroe Institute in Virginia or West Virginia, they were kind of the first ones to really come out with the binaural beats. I mean, there's so many mind-brain entrainment programs out there. There's all kinds of stuff on YouTube that's free. Amazon Music, YouTube, it's free. Amazon Music, you got to pay for a subscription, but they're all out there, and they are very beneficial to help people relax. We are so busy. Go here, go do this, must be there. We're on our phones or whatever it may be, that we forget to be still. Being still is a strange concept to someone in the Western mind, but yet, that's where the real magic happens, is when your body is still and you can listen to your inner voice, listen to your heart, listen to those divine messages from within.
I couldn't agree more. I think nowadays we just live in a world where we have like 30,000 thoughts every second. And even if you're doing something like you're driving or you're grocery shopping, let's say, you're still thinking about those emails you still have to send, those tasks that you still have pending. And there's never really a moment of stillness unless you actively go out of your way and take it. And it feels for many people that they're too busy to meditate. I hear that so often. And I don't know who said this, but it's a very famous quote that if you're too busy to meditate, you need to do it for at least an hour or more to really be able to clear your thoughts.
And the same people that say they're too busy to meditate will binge watch Netflix for 6 hours.
Exactly. Yeah. It's always a matter of priorities, isn't it?
Right. Jesus said to be still and know that I am. And he was actually referring to us, to be still and remember that who you really are.
And because I wanted to come back to this, you said earlier, whenever you wanted to remember being loved, being enough, you would just close your eyes and you would go back to that state.
I would dream about it. I would dream about being inside my bedroom closet, and inside that bedroom closet, I would find all those things. But that was just a metaphor about that everything is within you already. Everything that you want is already within you. It's just about aligning energy to those things, but they already exist. Everything is right here, right now.
Absolutely. And what I wanted to ask, because I think often people will be caught up in being worried, being anxious, being sad, all of these feelings that we're just so stuck in, and there's just no way to have hope for another day. There's also a lot of clutter going on in our minds, and very often society makes us feel like we're not good enough. So a lot of people will feel unlovable, not good enough, that they're missing XYZ. Is there a way we can connect back to who we really are, to connect to that source energy?
Yeah, through meditation, definitely being quiet, and also engage in activities that bring you joy. Engage in activities that make you feel wealthy. Engage in activities that make you feel good about you. And along with those lines, we are conditioned to think that our sense of who we are comes from other people. Well, when you shift that to realize that your sense of validation should come within you, that's when you shift your consciousness. Terry Cole Whitaker wrote the book, What You Think of Me Is None of My Business. Who cares what other people think? You are unique, precious. You're born to win, but conditioned to lose. I think that it's about learning to go within and finding out who you are. What brings you enthusiasm, what makes you enthusiastic, what makes you passionate, what brings you joy, and to engage on those things. And again, the passages do not focus on that which is seen. Always look within and decide who you are and what you want and what actions do you need to take to get there. You can't just go Om for 6 hours a day. That's just escaping from life. That's no different than being an alcoholic.
Absolutely. And what I'll say to this is I have anxiety tendencies. I don't say that I'm an anxious person, because then I think I will label myself that and then I'll behave according to the label just to confirm it. But whenever I would have exams in university, in my master's, I would just be very worried. I'd be studying until the last second, and then I'd go into the room with my notes and just stress out. What I started doing is just put my hand on my chest and just breathing really deeply. And nobody told me that that would be beneficial. It was just, I think, something that I intuitively did. But it was so helpful to bring it back to, it's fine, I will get through this. Even if it doesn't work out and I get a bad grade, it's not the end of the world. It's fine.
Right. So the number one cause of addictions or stressed out or anxiety is we get into our minds of how we think our life should be rather than accepting it as it is. When you allow yourself to accept your life exactly the way that it is, without making it wrong, without making it bad, or what I should have done, could have done, that's when you find inner peace.
And from this perspective, how do you go around setting goals or objectives for yourself?
First of all, you got to decide what you want. Most people on the planet don't know what they want. And they just kind of think, well, maybe someday that'll happen. You have to decide what you want. If you ever study Abraham Hicks, they talk about the power of decision as one of the most important things you can do. And that's just the key, deciding what you want and then realizing that, like if you're learning to play guitar, you're not going to be Eddie Van Halen in 24 hours. If you can, don't give up. Realize if you're too afraid of making, seem too big, take smaller steps. I've said this over and over again. Sabrina, if you and I leave for Jamaica at the same time and you get there 2 hours after I did, you didn't fail Jamaica. You got there when you needed to get there. We are our own worst critic. No one is more judgmental or critical of ourselves than we are. It's just not necessary.
Absolutely. It's something that I tell my mom, I have to say quite often, because she's just an unbelievable person, really amazing human being. But she is so unbelievably tough on herself. And I always say, like, do you ever pay yourself a compliment? If you were your friend, would you talk nicely to yourself? Like, if this person was outside of you, what do you think about that person? And it has to be good things. It has to be not to be polypositive or to sugarcoat everything, but you have to see the good sides of it and not just the flaws and things that can be improved.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
So, do you have any advice for people? And to be honest, I think it's especially women, maybe it's men as well, that go through this. But women, they're conditioned to always make themselves feel less than and think, well, I should be prettier, I should be smarter. If I didn't get this job, it's because I'm just not qualified enough, and there's so many more people that are better than me. If this guy doesn't call me, it's because I'm just not pretty enough, and maybe I need to have surgery or something. What's wrong when people think this way, and what's the right way to go about it?
Well, there's a saying that man's rejection is God's protection. First of all, don't take anything personal. This is one of the 4 agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, is never take anything personally, because people are just projecting whatever is going on within them and their mindset onto other people. The whole self-interest thing, part of the problem is that, Christianity teaches people that they're sinners born in sin, which is the biggest lie ever told on the planet. You were created in the likeness and image of God. Jesus said the kingdom of God is within you. To really stop to think about that, science has now shown that there is a 1 in 400 trillion chance, a 1 in 400 trillion chance that you are human, that you are on the planet right now. That is just a miracle in and of itself. And so you are a child of the utmost high God, and to think in terms of yourself that you are a spiritual being having a human experience, that you are lovable, that you are unique and precious, and that you deserve the best that life has to offer. Don't be a prisoner of your own mind.
Well said. Shifting gears a little bit here, because I also wanted to talk about sacred geometry.
Sure.
So, what is sacred geometry for everybody who doesn't know that, and how do you use it to heal people?
So sacred geometry is just like the Platonic solids. Of course, so it's called the flower of life symbol. The flower of life symbol they found in Abydos in Egypt over 22,000 years ago. It's like a really light blue color on Abydos. So this bone is 1.6 times longer than this one. This bone is 1.6 times longer than this one. 1.6 times longer, 1.6 times longer. If you take the height of the pyramid in Giza Plateau in Egypt and divide it by its base, it comes out to 1.6. It's called the Fibonacci ratio. And everything in nature is based on this Fibonacci spiral based on mathematics. So the higher intelligence that created life on the planet is well rehearsed in mathematics and geometry. The pyramids are on the exact center of the earth. They perfectly align with Orion's belt from people that, quote, couldn't have known how to do that. I mean, so everything is based in geometry and mathematics. Going back to the Fibonacci spiral, when a plant grows, it goes 1 leaf, 2 leaf, 3 leaves, 5, and so on to make that. The nautical shell is in that same spiral. When the sperm and egg meet, it becomes 2 circles, 2 cells, the vesica Pisces. Then it becomes 3, it becomes a square or a triangle. Then 4 becomes a square, and so on. So, in fact, everything can be found based on the flower life symbol in nature. It's a great, how can you use sacred geometry to heal the body? Well, there's a guy who actually lives in real close to me. His name is Dr. Richard Gilbert. And he talks a lot about the ancient Egyptians, mathematics, geometry. And then the passage in the Bible is, to cast your net, casting the net to the right. And Dr. Gilbert talks a lot about in Egyptian mythology, they talked about the net as the plane of higher consciousness, the plane where all knowledge could be found. One of the ways that humans can tap into that higher consciousness, that higher knowledge, is to visualize like the tree of life in the body, or visualize like a triangle around your head, or the platonic solids around the body. And it's those geometric patterns that enable you to connect or to bridge the gap between the net and human consciousness. If you have a heart condition, if you visualize that flower of life symbol, that flower of life symbol can be really helpful in helping repair the heart, or whatever it may be. So geometry can be used to connect to higher dimensional realities.
And how do people go around doing that?
Gaia, the TV show network, boy, they could just have a wealth of information about that stuff, especially if you look up Dr. Gilbert, or the other one is really good. Billy Carson's is phenomenal. I think some of Drunvalo Melchizedek stuff is on there, or just, Google the flower of life and Drunvalo Melchizedek, and, all that stuff is available on the internet, or to visualize the geometries around the body. Now, they talked to me about that, 30 years ago. I was told that.
Yeah, that's quite amazing that they shared this with you when you had your near-death experience or beforehand.
Right. I received a lot of information from 18 to 25. A lot.
Was it at any point scary to be given that information, or to be so in touch with entities that other people could not see or would not believe in?
No, because I kept it quiet to myself. But in 92 or 93, when I read the book Bringers of the Dawn by Barbara Marcinek, it talks about sacred geometry and sound. It just kind of reverberated the whole narrative experience, because it resonated to me that this was truth. And when you receive information about geometry and sound, it clicks and it falls into place, much more than anything else. And so to me, it was valid. It spoke truth to me, and that's why I didn't question it.
Yeah, for sure. So what I also wanted to get into was hypnotherapy, and particularly past life regression. So I know that you've been doing this for 30 plus years, so you must have had a lot of patients in this time. And the idea is that we can go back into our lives through hypnotherapy.
Sure. So the idea of past life regression is that times events from past lives or previous lifetimes are traumatic. We carry these traumatic energetic patterns with us into our lifetimes, and they become blocks. So the example I've used for years is, let's say you have a female who cannot conceive a child. No matter what they do, they just can't conceive it. Well, in past life regression, you find out that she was a woman, in the early 1800s, and she was forced to give up her baby, just leave it at the doorsteps of a church. And so her subconscious mind believes that if she has a child again, that she's going to lose it, that she's going to be forced to give it up. So that becomes an energetic block. Well, with past life regression, that there's that emotional catharsis that is released, and that energetic block is released, and that then she's able to go on and conceive a child. Or you have another person that, no matter what they do, they can't lose weight. Well, they experienced in a past life regression, they had, 3 lifetimes where they starved to death. So their body believes that no matter what happens to them, they're going to starve to death. It's releasing that energetic block, that energetic pattern. And that's what creates the healing within the individual. And also, a lot of times, someone just finds out that they're a villager, and they had a pretty simple life, and that's normal too. Or the other people will say, well, the math doesn't work. You have all these people on the planet, how can you have 40, 50 people say they were Cleopatra in a previous lifetime? Well, you have to keep in mind that the soul is energy, and energy always divides. The soul always divides. The soul is always expanding and growing. So you might have a lineage of souls that had that experience, and yet So all 40 or 50 people could say they were Cleopatra in a previous lifetime. They would all be correct.
I don't know if that really makes sense to me. So would it then be an embodiment? Would Cleopatra then be a embodiment of like 40 different souls?
No. So let's say cells always divide. They always divide, always expand. Your soul is always expanding. It's always dividing. It's always replicating. It's always expanding, becoming other souls. This is God, the life force. It's always expanding it. So that soul that was once Cleopatra could divide off into other souls or other lives. And so each of those individuals would have a memory of that timeline of being Cleopatra. Energy doesn't die. It only expands and grows. It only transforms.
So then it does make sense. And what I wanted to also ask you about this, because especially I've been reading Many Lives, Many Masters. So definitely a very good book for this topic. How many lives can we remember on average? And do you have any interesting story from one of your clients of what they were able to heal through past life regression?
Yeah, so that's a great question. You can have countless lifetimes, but usually when I do a session, I ask that the subconscious mind reveal the past lifetime that's most influencing your current one. And it's interesting that you mentioned Dr. Brian Weiss. Dr. Brian Weiss was trained by Dick Sutphin. Well, Dick Sutphin is the one who trained me. Dr. Weiss is the one that really made past life regression the most possible. But I've had people that, they go into a regression and they go through like 2 or 3 lifetimes, like kind of simultaneously. In fact, I just had a client that had a few months ago that had anxiety around water, was always terrified of swimming. And she went to a lifetime in Africa where she was drowned in the river. And so, that kind of explains, past life regression explains a lot as to why your life is the way that it is. It explains, like, maybe you make an agreement or a contract with individuals and it makes you realize, well, why they were in your life. And so it gives you clarity and answers that you might not otherwise be able to find.
Really interesting. Just before we close off, for people that are still dealing with grief, what is the best thing they can do right now?
Well, grief is a natural human process. I mean, it's very important that you grieve. Otherwise, you can't suppress it, or it creates disease in the body. And again, it goes back to what we're taught. And just because you're taught something doesn't mean that it's true. People were taught for thousands of years that the earth was flat and they believed it. The most important thing is to realize that the soul is eternal. Death is an illusion. Your departed loved ones are always with us. They're always there. If you learn to go within, either on meditation or through a hypnosis session, you can easily access communication to departed loved ones. Some people call this a mediumship, which I've done. The story I've told for many years now. I was speaking at the Wake Up Now conference in Albuquerque, New Mexico, back in 2011. I went on just before Dolores Cannon, and I had this guy come up to me, and he was like, "Mark, I think this is crap. I don't believe in any of this, but I want to talk to you." I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So I tell the guy, there's a man standing behind him. I'm guessing it's his father. And he's holding a wooden airplane. And he's pointing to the wooden airplane, and he's pointing to the sky. Well, Sabrina, this guy dropped to his knees and wailed just like a little kid. And it took him a few minutes to kind of gather himself. He finally got up and was like, wow. He said, when I was 7 years old, I built a wooden airplane for my father. Then I put the wooden airplane on the chair in the living room, and I went to the kitchen to go get something to eat. Then I came back in the living room. I forgot that I put the wooden chair, or the wooden airplane, on the chair, and I sat and I broke it. I was never able to give that wooden airplane to my father. Well, his father came through to let him know that he got that wooden airplane. Now, I cannot make that story up. When we realize that death is an illusion, and that's really what the message of the crucifixion was about, that Jesus resurrected to show that death was an illusion, that you are eternal. And this is what the Course in Miracles says. Course in Miracles says that nothing that is eternal can ever be threatened. And we get out of the mindset that they're not here, that, they're still part of us, that they'll always be a part of us. That kind of helps the grieving process. But again, I don't want to dismiss that. I mean, it's very important to grieve your loss. It's very important to not just be in your mind about it. Healing that is really important.
Yeah, I think a big lesson for me that I can share was feeling your feelings is something that for the longest time I would always run away from difficult feelings because it felt like there's no point and you can only just move forward. So if you just like stick it somewhere, I guess, and then you just get on with your life and you do great things, like then they will be gone, right? A few years back, I had this shift where I said, well, if I'm feeling sad, I'm just going to sit and be sad. And if I'm feeling heartbroken, I'm going to sit and feel heartbroken. And it's just amazing because then it feels like you're solving it. You're taking the time, you're allowing your body and your mind to do what it wants to do, and then it passes.
So, kind of along these lines, I really want to say this because this is so important to people who are suffering, people are having challenges, because I get asked over and over again, Serena, if God is love, and God is so loving and so caring, and again, 98% of people that have near-death experiences have a very similar experience to what I did. It's a very loving, peaceful. It's the amount of love that they have for us is unbelievable. And you are loved no matter what you do, no matter what you don't do. And all the times, we'll pray to God. God, just what do I need to do? I would encourage people to ask, what do I need to stop doing? When people are suffering, I'm going to say this, and please understand this is based on my near experience. It's based on countless other near experience. And it's based on some of the teachers of the older religion. Psalm 139:16 says, every day of my life, every moment was recorded in your book before a single one had passed. So why do bad things happen to good people? That is the number one question I get asked over and over again. Bad things happen to, quote, good people is because you wanted someone to forgive. You wanted to be forgiven. Your soul said, this time I'm going to demonstrate the power of love. I'm going to show love. And there was a woman, Immaculée, in the 90s during the Rwanda Congo civil wars. This is a true story. You can look it up. It's deeply moving. I mean, this is one of the most powerful human stories I think out there. She and 7 other people had to hide in the bathroom of an individual's house to survive. They hid in the bathroom with 7 other people in this bathroom to keep away from the militants, the people that were creating the civil war in the Congo, Rwanda. And when the dust settled and it was all over, they kind of found the main perpetrator of the uprising and all the killings. And they gave Immaculée like a gun and a machete. And with guards standing, around, they said, let this SOB have it. Just kill him, whack him, damage, whatever you want to do. And she found a way to have real compassion, real love, real forgiveness for this individual. And she let go of all the hatred and resentment. She understood the assignment. She got it. And that's easier said than done, because our human condition is, with our mind and our egos, is, do on to others before they do on to you, right? Instead of doing to others what we want done to us. And again, it's just, your life is the way that it is because you planned it out. And this goes, John Calvin, there used to be the predestined, predetermined Presbyterians. They kind of faded out by the early 1800s, but the concepts of the pre-existing soul have been around for many, many years. We know that karma and reincarnation were removed from the Christian Bible in 553 AD at the Second Council of Constantinople by the Nicene Decree. And in 325 AD, there were about 20 books that were removed from the Christian Bible, Book of Mary, Book of Truth, that were all about putting the power of God within the individual and not the power of God within the church. 360 AD, the Bishop of Alexander, he's the one that really cemented like the 26, 27 books that were to be part of the New Testament. And then by the 16th century, that had everything came about fear and control the masses through fear. You're going to go to hell. The Gnostic Christians defined hell as the distance that you place yourself between you and God. And the more that you believe that you were separate from God, it was said that you were living a life in hell. Hell was actually a village outside of Jerusalem where they burned garbage. And it was said that if you could not afford a proper burial, you were placed in a shallow grave where the animals could not easily gnaw at your flesh. But brimstone fire hell didn't come until the 16th century with the King James version, but Native Americans, particularly the Lakota elders. I happened to do a sweat lodge with the Wallace Black Elk back in '97, and they say that your life is the way it is because it really can't be any other way. I don't totally agree with that because I do think that the laws of grace supersede the laws of karma, and that with wisdom and grace you can evolve. The word evolve is the only word in the English language that has the word love in it, and that's what we're here to do, is to evolve, to demonstrate the power of love, to love, no matter what happens to us.
I love this. It's such a beautiful story, and so nice the way you brought it back to how it can be relevant to us today. And it also reminds me of something in Many Lives, Many Masters, where the woman being hypnotized remembers this past life where she's in the middle of a war and she witnesses somebody being killed. And then somebody else, a master in this case, says, it's not our role to punish, it's not our role to get revenge, because that's only what God does. We cannot get revenge on one another.
Right. Yeah. As we see in the world today, the Israel-Palestinian conflict, that conflict has been going on for 40,000 years. It started with the Anunnaki, the brothers Anil and Emil. The Anunnaki one group wanted the humans to remain as slaves to mine the gold for them. The other group wanted humans to be free. And so, it's just humanity's insanity at its worst. My God's right, your God's wrong, we're saved, you're not, the land belongs to us, it belongs to the land doesn't belong to you, you belong to it. It's crazy making.
Exactly.
If anyone wants to make contact with me, I'm on Instagram at Sedona Mark Patterson, or my website is Mark Patterson, PATTERSON.com. If you don't put the dash in, you're going to get a famous jeweler out of New York City. The thing that I do a lot of is past life regression, hypnosis, and intuitive coaching, if you want to call it psychic or whatever. But I really try to do intuitive counseling, hypnosis, hypnotherapy, past life regression. If I can my goal is to get people to feel good about themselves. If you can get you to feel good about yourselves, if you can feel empowered, your life is going to change. Again, I've said this over and over again. We're born to win, conditioned to lose. We are winners, not sinners. Even the New Testament talks about how important confidence is, and it'll carry you a long way. I help people release traumatic blocks. That's the bottom line, because you have done nothing wrong. There are only actions and consequences. And we get into our whole minds about, what's good, what's bad, what's right or wrong, until we learn to evolve with compassion, forgiveness, and non-judgment. And of course, the old Zen saying is, we teach best what we most need to learn. I'm still learning. If I had learned all this stuff, I wouldn't be in a body right now. It's like you're always learning how to be better, to be more compassionate, to be more empathetic, to be more understanding. Because the reality is that, the person that you hate is just an aspect of you. There is no out there. This is one of the 7 truths of the Essenes. Mary and Joseph were Essenes. Jesus was an Essene. That everything in your life is a mirror of what's going on within you. So, learn to see yourself in all people, all places, and all things.
Well said. And again, it mirrors something that I was reading, I think, these past few months, that it really triggered me, and I disagreed with it so strongly when I read it. And it was, what you like in other people, you like in yourself. And what you dislike in other people, you dislike in yourself. So I started thinking of examples, like, what do I appreciate in my friends? What do I appreciate in the people that are closest to me? And what drives me crazy? And lo and behold, exactly what I love and hate about myself.
Yeah. So, that's why, people always ask, well, I just want to do God's will. What's God's will for me? Well, God's will is to give thanks for all things, not just the things you like, but for all things.